Hello, everyone. Welcome to Foundry, short Thursday podcast. I'd like to have a little bit of conversation about the tools of love. And I don't have my offsiders with me today, so it's going to be just us. The value of keeping this conversation going is to manage to empower yourself with love. Has to take a bunch in so that you have a lot to sort out the necessities, the small details about bringing love into impact with your life. It's simple from a distance, but up close, it takes a bunch of little emotional and mental and consequential ideas aligned with yourself to feel confident about power with it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tools that love offers. And this has two purposes for me. One is to remind you that there's an immense amount of things within love itself that apply to our life. It limitless, really. I could only mention a few of the things that are on the surface. So we'll work on that a little bit. When we think about love, we generally, growing up and coming into the world from a human perspective, we think that, love's love. That's it. But the nuances of love don't really come to our attention until we start to investigate love as a singularity of life. It's when you take all of life, the whole thing, the whole enchilada, and you divide what is knowable to us at this time in our evolution and divide that into three things. In each of those three things are many things. Those three things are, from the human point of view, will, which has an immense amount of things in it. For example, purpose. You can't have purpose without will, because purpose is how will expresses itself. So, and we have intelligence. Now, intelligence has an immense amount of things included in it. But none of will and none of intelligence are love. Love is its own unique 1/3 of the totality of life as we can know it. I would tend to say it's more than 1/3, but probably it's not when you get to know all about the whole thing. So we're looking at 1/3 of life, the thing in life that's called love, not the thing that's intelligence, not the thing that's will, although you can add will to intelligence, and you can add love to will, and you can add intelligence to love. We can mix and match these three qualities, these three aspects of life. But if you take love out, remove it, then there's no way that you can make a satisfying experience out of life, because the energy of love, the meaningfulness of love, will not register in our consciousness. Doesn't matter whether it's here or not, it won't register in our awareness as a inclusive aspect of the will and intelligence we're applying to create a life, to live a life. So we're going to look at love as a little bit in terms of some of the things that are within it, available to us once we take on the power of love as a aspect of our life. You see, your life and love's life are inseparable. They're the same life. So if you make yourself unconscious of love, then you have taken that part out of the life that animates you or me or us. So we try not to do that. We try to look at why we aren't including love in our life as a conscious experience with us, and how we can shift that so that that power comes in and balances itself with whatever else we're doing. Now, we have to balance will. How much will are you going to use to do something? There has to be an intelligent balance with whatever our purpose and outcome are. Which aspects of intelligence are you going to use? If you're trying to change a tire on your car, you're going to need some intelligence. You're not going to need all the intelligence there is. It's not rocket science. But if you're on an angle, there's wind blowing, it's raining. So then you have to think about things that you otherwise might not. So intelligence and will correspond in our life according to what we're trying to do with it. Trying to change the tire on the car. We're not trying to build a Brooklyn Bridge. Just give me enough will and intelligence to get this job done and get me back on the road. But when we employ love as a power in our life, we don't have quite the same option. You don't regulate love's temperature. You don't regulate love's amount. You don't regulate when it acts and when it doesn't. We don't get to do that. We can throw it out of our consciousness. We can send love away. We can reject it with anger, or inject it with hatred, or reject it with fear or some other quality. But we can't force it to do anything. We can only put ourselves in a posture in relationship to love that encourages it to join us. There may be something outside of our consciousness that prohibits love from joining us in any given circumstance. These are the terms upon which karma impacts our life. It is governed by an intelligence, love. Remember, the lords of karma, those beings that manage the karma of a star, a planet, a being, a human, those intelligences that do that job are being governed by love beyond our reach, not beyond our appeal, but beyond our control. So when we appeal towards love to join us as a power in our coexistence with life upon this earth, love does it at its own behest, at its own approval. So what we can do, if we want it, is we can put ourselves in harmony with it. We can put ourselves in a posture in relationship to it where it's all possible. And then we can invoke it or invite it. In an invocation, the difference between an invitation and an invocation is an invocation is an act of will. It may not do you any good in the case of love because it won't necessarily respond. It'll always respond. I shouldn't say it won't respond. It'll always respond. But sometimes that response is silence. For reasons sometimes we have no idea. We pray for things and nothing seems to happen sometimes, maybe a lot of times. But we don't know why. And we assume that prayer and love are probably related. And it doesn't matter who's doing the praying. Everyone in the darkest prison or in the greatest castle is equal before love, equally potential to be loved. Love loves everything equally, but not always the way we want it to. So sometimes that makes us question whether or not love exists, question whether or not deity exists, whether or not our grace exists, whether we're wrong or right or worthy or all those things, when we're usually wrong about all of that, because love's not making any judgments. You would think it would be making judgments, because prayer sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But it's not. There's another process at work here. And so we have to look deeper into the process and deeper into love to begin to understand why we can be empowered by love and yet not have any control over it, or limited control over it, let's put it that way. Life is bigger than our vision of it at any given moment, and longer. And love has that vision of life always. So it sees down the road. It sees the past, because past, present, and future are a single momentary event to love. It lives in the now. It lives in the eternal now, where everything is simultaneously real and happening. And so we don't have that perfect point of view. So we can think that something should happen in our now, this immediate moment we happen to be hanging out with. But love may have another point of view, and it may be acting according to a larger, more encompassing perspective on what will best serve us and best serve the whole in which we live. So the timing of something may not be what we want it to be. Love is setting its timing according to events that may be larger than we're aware of, more important than we're aware of. And some things require certain tempering before we can use them. A sword can't be sent into battle until it's been tempered in the fire sufficiently to be able to take the blow. And if it's not quite tempered and we want to rush off into the battle with it, then the armor is supposed to tell us, hold on a minute, we have to plunge it into the fire. Now, you may not want to take the time, but it's not an ornament. It's a tool. And we need that tool tempered with heat and cold before it's going to be sufficient for the day. So love's not different from that. It's acting in a larger purpose all the time. And because we don't trust it always, we don't see it, we don't recognize there is no death to anything, there's no end to ourselves, that inconvenience doesn't make the whole world bend. We're not all princesses and princes to just get things the way we want them. But we are never abandoned by love. We are always answered, and the answer is sometimes, hang on a minute, even when it's not convenient, in the extreme. And nothing says it to us more than some tragedy that we think love could have prevented, the death of your child. That's probably the hardest blow we can endure. But love endures through that. That life endures through it. The loss is balanced. Nothing ends in tragedy. It's only a temporary condition in the unfolding of perfection. And at some point or another, we recognize and are grateful for things unfolding exactly the way they do, which is hard to believe when it's something that you don't want. So I'm just looking around for something here, but I don't see it. All right. So let's take a look at a couple of things that love has. Hold on, I've got to find myself something to blow my nose with. Should have got that before I sat down. Don't go away. I've got a really tight quarter here. Now, if I had a lot of minions serving me, I like minions. Who doesn't like minions? But I don't. And the range of studio suddenly, due to circumstances, got collapsed to something really small, and it'll broaden back out in a day or two. So, where are we? Oh, yeah. Back in business. Now, let's look at a couple of tools. If you needed something transformed, like water into wine, as Jesus did on the occasion of his friend's wedding, and they goofed up and didn't order enough wine, probably didn't have enough money. That's the only reason I wouldn't. But his mom, now how did she know? I really don't know. It's not explained in the story, but what you see in the story, if you read it, it's an interesting story if you just look at what actually happened. He shows up with a couple of his buddies, John or somebody or another, Paul probably all of them, I don't know. And his mom comes and informs him they're out of wine. And his response to that, because he hadn't performed any miracles yet, but she knew that. She knew he hadn't performed any miracles. Sometimes moms are smarter than we think. And he said, what's that got to do with me? Because he didn't. And he said, my time hasn't come, which means he felt like he wasn't on deck yet, like a batter at a baseball game. I'm not up to bat yet. And she didn't let up. She pressed on him. Because the servants show up and go, what are we supposed to do? She had one of the guys summon the servants, and so the servants show up, and then she looked at the servants and said, do whatever he tells you. Which sort of threw it back into his court again. So what he does is he recognizes, I can't dodge this. I've got to deal with it. And here it is. And let's find out if this tool that love has, which is the power of transformation and possibly a little bit of transmutation, is actually available in this energy. Because love is living, it's life, and it's intelligent. It's the creator of all things. So someone has to put this to the test. And this is where it's supposed to happen, apparently, because he follows the steps. Well, if this is going to work, I'm going to need water. So go get 4 jugs and fill them full of water and bring them here. So actually, I got to get the order right, because your details are important when you're talking about Bibles and things like that. So he says to the servants, go get 4 jars, and they're empty, 4 stone jars. Each of these jars, by the way, holds about 48 gallons or something like that. They're big jars. So it's a big party. So they get 4 jars, and he tells them, now fill them up with water. And that's important because they know they're empty. They know they filled them with water. So we have witnesses, and the witnesses are the servants. And then he does whatever, I don't know whether he just passes over it like a magician would. But when he's done, he sends it off. Take it to the head of the party. And it's good Cabernet or something. So this is a tool, 2 tools, perhaps, because transformation and transmutation are available at love's will when needed. Now, If you're empowered by love, that doesn't mean that love's going to turn your water into wine. I suppose for some, it could. I mean, people who are pretty familiar with love. Because I don't think love would refuse if you were advanced, really advanced, in your relationship to life and to love and to the powers of it. But remember, this was a circumstance in which it was needed. And I don't know what manifests that need, except that love needed to be demonstrated. That was one of the needs. Love had not yet been found powerful. So that was the first opportunity. And the second is that it was a sincere joining of this man and this woman in matrimony to a family, to a spiritual and sacred event with Jewish religion engaged, and family to some degree, and somehow, in some way, this is family to them because they're invited and they're here. So there's a number of elements that meet situations. But I think the most important one is that love had entered into the life of Jesus of Nazareth and was abiding in him, with him, and had not yet been demonstrated to anybody, except maybe his mom saw it or something. I don't know. And it was time for this to these workings to start manifesting in such a way that it could become the story that it has finally become. Not finally, because we're not in the last act of it, we're just entering it. So those are two great tools: transformation, transmutation. And anyone who's spent any time respecting love over time realizes this is possible. This isn't the only miracle that ever happened. And when a love evolved miracle occurs in circumstance, transformation and transmutation often accompany it. And this went on to prove itself to be true. Because we're starting a legend going when this happens, right? Oh, this guy can turn water into wine. Okay, that's pretty miraculous. And then we discover that that's not the only thing he can do, because people start becoming healed in his vicinity based upon his touch, his faith in it, his willingness to employ love on behalf of someone's well-being. So the circumstances of healing start to occur. So if we wish to call healing a tool of love, we have it. Now, it probably is basically not dissimilar to turning water into wine, except that it involves someone's well-being. It involves their dynamic health, which is mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and physical health. But we see that healing, if we wish to put it under its own category, is a tool that love can employ on behalf of someone who needs it. And not necessarily everyone. I think there are some circumstances in the Bible, I don't know, I'm not a really good Bible scholar, to be honest with you, where someone was not healed. And in a personal vision I had of a circumstance at one time, someone was not healed in this vision that I was in. And it was because they had no faith in the process. And so that was just part of the lesson of that particular vision. And it always kind of stuck with me that that's probably true. If you don't want to be healed, then of course love's not going to. Probably not going to. Because love will not override free will. And if you lack faith in it, don't believe in it, don't believe in love, you could, in the case of the Bible, we have people believing in Jesus, we're thinking that people are, but it's the power that's in him that they're trusting. And he seems to have the power to wield it, but probably he does not. Probably if the person does not deserve it, or love won't violate their willingness or unwillingness to do it, then it's not going to happen. It's just that Jesus was pretty sensitive to what was available and possible. So let's leave healing and transformation and transmutation on the table as three tools of love. Now, the other thing we know about love is that in its vicinity comes the consciousness of grace. So grace is like the emotional atmosphere, which is probably not the right term, but it's like, so I said it's like the emotional atmosphere that comes with love. Grace has this incredible quality of poise and forgiving and kindness. If you take kindness and poise and forgiving and add them together, they make up a very big part of what we would call grace. Not to mention other things, beauty, the sense of perfect balance and perfect inclusiveness, the sense of artistry, full artistry in expression, in spirituality, in consciousness, in mind, all of that done in a perfect, graceful, and beautiful way gives us grace. And it's a tool of love. Now, what the powers that are within grace, we don't know exactly. I'm not very graceful. I'm a little rough. So maybe there are others who there's some people that you look at them and they're just full of grace. And you think, and I think there's some religious outfit that refers to their heroes in their group, maybe the Pope, and maybe maybe it's a cardinal, and they call them Your Grace, which doesn't mean they are, we know, but it applies that quality of love we're bestowing on them as a matter of an honorific, even when they may themselves not possess it, actually. So, grace. Let's consider grace one of those tools. Now, other things happen in the vicinity of love when it empowers us, like timing. We don't know how timing works out because we can be in a situation where it just can't work out. We're screwed. Ain't gonna happen. We're not getting out of this. And then somehow the timing shifts in life. Life itself's timing shifts. And, the tragedy didn't occur. And this is where I think grace has a quality in there somewhere. Something else did occur. And the tension of the situation that looked like it was going to be fatal or catastrophic or tragic suddenly turns into something that is the opposite of that. So one of the tools that love has, as we think about it, is this ability to alter time in some way we don't understand because we don't understand time. We think time is the passing of moments, when in the eternal now, everything is now. Well, how does that work? Well, we have to find out how it works by entering into that now and letting our consciousness stop trying to rush to the future and leave the past and suddenly calm down and become stable and enter into awareness of now. Well, there it is now. And we are all actually in it. We may be unaware that we're in it, but we are in it because that's the only time there is, and that's where love lives. So if it can alter things in the now, then it can alter time. Now, I don't think love can go back and erase things that have happened. I don't know that it can, but I just don't suspect that's part of its tools. But things can happen that we think are going to happen or are happening now can suddenly shift and a different outcome appears. And I've seen a bit of that in war. You can think a circumstance is over, and yet suddenly it isn't. And you don't know how, you don't know why. You just realize that something happened here that's really kind of remarkable. And it's like someone's watching that can see things better than you can and has the ability to just tweak it, just move it a little, just shift it slightly. So whatever you thought was going to happen in terms of events in time turn out to be something else. So we're going to give to love tools, something that has to do with modifying the outcome of events in motion related to time. Yeah, we don't know what to put under time, except that we're going to give that tool to love. So now we have, 5 or 6 different things. Now, when we look at, what's happening is your consciousness is adding up things about love. It's saying, well, wait a minute. Yeah, love shows up and modifies circumstances. And it does it by using tools that are effective in transformation, transmutation. Now, the next tool that love has, which is its greatest tool, they have a greater tool that I don't know about, but in my perspective, love has the ability to, because it is itself, it has the ability to bring our awareness into the realization in an empowered way of unity. Now, unity is one of those words that we have to take some time with if we're going to give the fullness of that power that love has, that tool that love has, to ourselves. That's going to take time. Long after we have accepted the reality of love with ourselves in the event of living with us, love is always there. Long after we give it the power of unity, we're going to be learning what unity means. And at first thought, we think, oh, it's us in connection with something else. There's somebody over there on the other side of the planet, and somehow I'm in unity with that person, even though I've never met them in this lifetime. There's something that we have as a commonality. And we see that happening as it brings about meetings with people that are impossible, but yet that you suddenly meet them. And it's like, what brought us together? Well, something that knew about you both and brought you into the same space so that you could experience each other in a certain way. Not always positively, sometimes tragically. But that's a capacity that lives within love. It knows everything and where everything is and how they find their way to each other through another tool of love, which is attraction. And but it does it through unity. It knows the unity of all things, so moving something around in relationship to another thing becomes relatively easy for it. I don't know, it doesn't seem to strain love's brow to do it. So love has this thing called unity, but it's far greater than just you being connected to something else. And you start with that and start to let that become okay. And don't compete with your individuality, because it's your individuality that is in unity with all other individualities and all other things. It can be a horse and your individuality and the horse's individuality, which is not in its consciousness, but it is in the fact of its singularity. You can have a relationship. And if you get stung by a bee, you and that bee have come to a place of meeting. So unity works. And love has it. That's what makes it work. That's what makes it happen. And when we are absent, but this is how we know this. We know something about this particular tool of love called unity, because when we don't have unity with something, if we look close, you'll discover that your relationship to love may be missing in that perspective. We can be angry at somebody. We can hate somebody. We can reject something. But that doesn't make love separate you from it. You can only separate yourself from it up here, or maybe in your heart. You can isolate yourself from it in a way that makes you feel like, I'm separate from that guy. But in love's embrace of the universe, no such thing. Nope. You can't be separated from that guy because love refuses separation. It doesn't exist in unity. And you can't have both. You can't have unity, which love enforces throughout the universe, and have separation from that guy, even though he's a bastard and you should be separated from him. Not going to happen. So, and that's an important consideration to give yourself. Can you break love's unity? Well, it's asking yourself if you can break life's unity. And if you, how do you remove life from itself? Now, you can't force it to show you unity. Love can show you how you are in union with something far distant that you might not think you have any commonality with at all. The star beetle guys. We have no idea how we relate to beetle guys. But love could show you. And it's most assured that you do have a unity. Because unity is, just like the eternal now is. It simply is. And everything is there. Everything is there. There isn't any other place to be. It's all happening now. Even though we think the Gettysburg Address was read out a while ago. So you see, it's a trick of the mind. And we're not asking, well, I'm not asking anyone to let go of their sense of the past or their sense of the future or their sense of present to enter into the eternal now. We'll do that at some point as an exercise in a workshop so that you can realize the consciousness of the eternal now, which is a good thing to experience because that will connect you to the things that live there, like love, like life, like joy, like ecstasy. Conditions that exist in life as basic vibrations of being all live in the eternal now. Now, you can recreate joy from a place in the past where you had a joyful moment. Hopefully, everyone's had a joyful moment or two in their life. I sometimes have to shuffle the deck to find one, but they're there. But when you pull that card out of that joyful moment, it's not in the past. The joy of that moment is in you now as a result of having established your connection to it in the past. Joy is not bound and limited to an event. When she said yes, when you won the lottery or whatever it was that you felt was a joyful moment. Joy itself is this immense energy that opens up in us when love acts in our life in a way that we actually sense its contact, a reverberating contact with us. When the will of our soul nature, which is love, unfolds something into our life, we feel joy. So then that joy will happen in a moment that we'll remember. We remember the circumstances. But when we return to the circumstances, it's the joy in the now that we're in, the reliving of the presence of love that we feel if we experience it. Sometimes we go back and look at the moment and it's not so joyful later because other circumstances have added to it to shadow it. But the point here is that joy is one of those things that lives in love, along with the other tools that love has. And it lives in the eternal now, which is a tool of love. We're beginning to recognize that when you start talking about the power of love, you're talking about a lot of different things that can be incorporated into one experience of life. All of those can be happening in one moment of life. All the tools of love can be employed. Now, the unity of love, which we were discussing, is not limited by just your contact with other things, other places. Because the truth of the matter, and this is going to push your envelope of consciousness a little, possibly, there isn't any other place. Everything in the universe, and this is, let's go back for a moment to Jesus. And the reason that that's a significant place to go to is because the world was a certain way right up to that moment. And then it changed. The world changed. And we all changed with it. And how it changed was that love itself, as a conscious cosmic being, chose to enter into the human experience with this young human, this Jesus of Nazareth, this Jew. How he and his culture created someone capable of embodying that presence in themselves without losing their cool, I don't know. Maybe he did on the day that it descended on him, but so these are some of the tools of love, and we'll call it here because I've got other things pressing on me. And I just want you to know that we're opening this up for discussion because when we invoke the power of love in us, it comes with a toolkit. Let the toolkit come and we'll unpack it in the workshops and the things that we do to lead forward. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time on a Thursday, and we'll see you next time.